Leaders from African countries and France have been attending the 27th France-Africa Summit. Security and the migrant crisis has been the focus of the summit as it opened in Mali on Saturday. The leaders agreed to enhance cooperation in areas of security, peace and fighting terrorism. France has been working together with African countries in battling terrorism. Over 4,000 French troops remain in Mali and across the Sahel region. France has also trained more than 20,000 African soldiers each year since 2013.
The Bamako summit is not just a large political and diplomatic meeting. It also creates a space for the exchange of economic and social forces which, through the creation of wealth, embody the assets and future of our countries.
A
country torn, threatened by terrorism, divided from the inside, and sometimes doubting its own future? Yes. There are a few examples in this world where such a country has been able to recover as quickly and stand back up before us today. It is a lesson you, Mali, have taught the international community. There are no fatalities. There is no process that would be irreversible.
Let's get you more on that story now. I'm joined live from Paris by Kate Parkinson. Kate, can you tell us why the France-Africa Summit is significant for President Hollande?
Well, this particular summit is extremely significant for the French president. He's got one foot out of the door. The French will elect a new president in the spring. Hollande is not seeking a second term. He is deeply unpopular on the home front, but actually his foreign policy, his hawkish approach and military interventions in Africa and the Middle East have won him praises. So this summit, and particularly its location in Mali, is really an opportunity for the French president to showcase some of his successes. And we have seen him and his Malian counterpart, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, discussing some of those at the press conference at the end of the summit yesterday.
Well, Kate, battling terrorism, though, is one of the biggest areas of cooperation between France and African countries. How successful has that cooperation been?
Well, let's start in Mali. And as I said, the location of this summit extremely significant because it was in Mali that Hollande was first able to show himself as an international statesman determined in his action, because if you remember back in 2013, following a request from the Malian government, Hollande launched a military intervention to push back jihadists who'd taken over huge swathes of the north of the country and were marching on the capital, Bamako. It was a highly dangerous situation in Mali, and actually Hollande is praised for effectively bringing Mali back from the brink. And so this was something that he and Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta were discussing yesterday, how Mali really has managed to recover itself. It is certainly one example of successful cooperation between France and an African nation. But that is not the full picture, because Mali is still in a very difficult position. There is still a lot of insecurity in the north of the country. The threat has certainly reduced significantly from where it was back in 2013, but the jihadist threat does still exist. And so Hollande was very keen to reassure his Malian counterpart and the other African leaders who were at this summit that France will remain in the area. As you mentioned, the French military has around 4,000 troops stationed in Mali and across the Sahel region. Those troops will stay, Hollande said, for as long as all the countries involved want them to be there. He said France will stand alongside Africa in its fight against this global threat of terrorism and jihadists.
And of course, Kate, 2016 was dominated by the migrant crisis in Europe and coming from Africa. And of course, the challenges of migration is another focus for France when it comes to Africa. What specifically, though, will Paris be looking for from the continent in 2017 when it comes to the Mediterranean crisis?
Well, it's not just France. This is a view that across Europe, that European countries want to stem the flow of migration from Africa to Europe last year saw record numbers of people making that deadly trip across the Mediterranean. Over 180,000 people crossed from North Africa to Italy last year. It was a record number, and in fact it was a record number of deaths last year as well. Around 5,000 people lost their lives making that incredibly dangerous journey. Now, of course, the people that make these journeys, some of them are fleeing war, some of them are fleeing political persecution, some of them are fleeing poverty. Now, what the European countries and indeed France are hoping is that by supporting African countries on issues such as security, cooperating with them in the battle against terrorism, and by funding development projects, they'll be able to stem that migration flow, particularly slowing the flow of economic migrants. And in fact, the French President, François Hollande, announced in Mali that France will fund up to 23 billion euros worth of development projects in Africa over the next 5 years. And certainly there is a hope that that will stem the flow. But so far, 2017 already looking showing no signs of that flow of migrants slowing down. Already UNHCR saying more than 1,000 people have made that journey across the Mediterranean so far this year. 11 people have already lost their lives, and it's only the 15th of January.
Right, Kate Parkinson joining us there from Paris.